You're listening to Pillow Talk, a Hatch Plus original bedtime podcast designed to help you unwind. For our phone-free, immersive bedtime experience, find us at hatch.co.
G'day, I'm Matt Stewart, a comedian and history lover from Melbourne, Australia, and you're listening to History from A to Zonked on Hatch Plus. What a pleasure it is to be with you as always tonight. I'm really looking forward to telling you all about the Eagle Diamond Thief. As a kid, I found the idea of searching for treasure very exciting. I think probably most people, when they see an old timer with a metal detector down at the beach, they see him as a bit of an oddball, a bit of a kook. But I was always jealous of them, imagining all the amazing things that they must find. Now I'm grown, and I'm just realising as I'm talking to you that I could go out and get a metal detector whenever I wanted to. Nothing's stopping me. Maybe I'll get one tomorrow. Anyhow, enough of me getting nostalgic. Tonight I'm going to be telling you a story that begins with a massive discovery. This one was made without a metal detector, and it was made purely by chance. And from there, the story has a lot of wild twists and turns. So let's get stuck into it. So the Eagle Diamond was a 16-carat diamond discovered in the town of Eagle, Wisconsin in 1876. Probably have figured out where it got its name from. Maybe you were picturing it looked like an eagle, but no, it was just from Eagle. It was discovered by workers who were digging a well. The well was being dug where the town's water tower now stands. You know, if you want to go see the spot. Workers were hired for the digging of the well by a man named Samuel Wood. And after the discovery, the gem ended up in his wife Clarissa's possession. And she then took it to a jeweler named Samuel Boynton. He had the idea that it was probably topaz, which is a much more common and obviously less valuable gem than the classic diamonds. And white topaz can look quite similar to diamonds. So he ended up buying it off her for $1, which is about $21 today. So obviously, if that's topaz, fine. But as it turned out, it was a genuine diamond, and he got it for an absolute bargain. Seems like there's a bit of a conflict there. He was the one who told her it was probably topaz. I guess that's how it works. Like going into a pawn shop or something, they value it and make you an offer. But yeah, it seems like he wasn't trying to be dodgy or anything. He genuinely thought it was topaz. But then when he took it for analysis in Chicago, he discovered it was actually the largest diamond found in the United States at that time. So it's a fair upgrade there. And he sold it to Tiffany's for $850, which is something towards 20 grand today. You might have thought he might have thrown a few of those dollars back to Clarissa Woods, who he bought it off for $1, but no, he did not. And she tried suing him, but was unsuccessful, probably mainly because it was found on land that wasn't hers anyway, I guess. After that, Boynton quietly leased the land that the diamond was found on with the hope of finding more diamonds. I think he was pretending it was like a chicken farm or something, but he was just quietly and systematically digging up the whole patch of land over the period of a couple of years, but he did not find another diamond, unfortunately. This meant basically was renting a chunk of land that wasn't all that valuable, and to try and figure out a way of turning it into some cash, he started salting the land with diamonds, basically sprinkling inferior gems around the land so that when he showed it to potential investors, they were like, oh, yeah, okay, this is good signs. A few little diamonds here. When there's little diamonds, yeah, there's probably going to be bigger ones nearby. But yeah, he was just conning them basically. Didn't go particularly well anyway. Back to the diamond itself. So in 1889, Tiffany's curator of precious stones organised a Gems and Precious Stones from North America exposition in Paris. This was at the Exposition Universelle. Sorry about that. I'm awful at French, but that's my best guess. Anyway, it was, the big world fair in Paris, which come up a lot in this show. I feel like we mentioned the World Fair or one of the World Fairs every couple of months. But it was a big hit, this exhibition at the Paris World Fair that included the Eagle Diamond, and the exhibition won a gold medal at the World Fair. The collection was then bought by J.P. Morgan to be displayed in the American Museum of Natural History. It was during this exhibition in 1964 that the diamond was stolen amongst hundreds of other gems. It was huge news. It was a massive haul for these, you'd assume, professional cat burglars. You're picturing a big team of, Ocean's 11 style thieves with each with individual skills, but it didn't really go like that. It was a much smaller ragtag band. The main thief, it was soon figured out, was a guy known as Murph the Surf, his full name being Jack Roland Murphy, and he was a surfer, Murph the Surf. So Murph the Surf was born in LA in 1937. He had pretty broad interests. He loved surfing, but also was a handy violinist. And he bragged years later in an interview that he played violin for the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. He also got into university based on his tennis playing attributes. But apparently, one of these days when he was at uni, going to uni in Pittsburgh, he looked up and saw like the air pollution from some of the steel mills and had this realization. He's like, if I don't leave now, I'm going to die in this city. And he jumped on the next train and, I guess head back to the beach for the surf and whatnot. He was hanging out a lot with a guy named Alan Kahn, and Kahn had a history of petty crime. Murph the Surf also worked with a man called Roger Clark. And I said it was pretty low-key stuff, but Murph did scope out the museum before the job, and he was pretty pleased with what he saw because he found security to be minimal, to say the least. This included a non-operational alarm system. This is probably the key one. External windows that were left open 2 inches overnight for ventilation, and display case alarms that were non-operational. Basically, non-existent security, really, is what we're talking about here. On the evening of the 29th of October, 1964, they simply climbed through the open windows. According to a New York Post article, he used a glass cutter to cut a hole in the display case that contained the Eagle Diamond, as well as a number of other jewels, including the Star of India, which was a 563-carat sapphire, which was considered to be the most valuable jewel at the time. So this is a big one, which makes it even more incredible how lax the security was. The jewels were valued at the time at $400,000. Talking like in today's money, multi-millions, but even some say that can't put a price on them. But that's what they tried to do. When they tried to put a price on it at the time, 400,000 is what they came up with. So what happened? How were they busted? Just a couple of days later, they were arrested. And this was because where they were staying, they were throwing lavish parties all of a sudden out of nowhere, having these lavish parties. And the police were tipped off about this. There's all of a sudden, it's funny timing, but these surf bums are all of a sudden living it up like they're multimillionaires. So the cops arrested them, but weren't able to find any of the jewels. But they did find enough evidence for them to be charged with burglary, like the glass cutters and a bunch of other stuff. They were then released on bail, where they returned to Florida, where Murphy had been living. While they were there, they committed another robbery. This one was, if you think of the first one as being a victimless crime, this one wasn't. As well as robbing, they also assaulted their victims, Eva Gabor and her husband, Richard Brown. You might recognise the name Eva Gabor, Zsa Zsa Gabor's sister, but also a famous Hungarian actress in her own right, who was on the hit show Green Acres at the time. If you're not old enough to remember or you haven't seen repeats of Green Acres, perhaps you'll know her voice at the very least, as she voiced the Duchess and Miss Bianca in the animated Disney classics The Aristocats, The Rescuers, and The Rescuers Down Under. So for this crime, they had a much higher bail. It was set at $150,000, which I don't think they were able to meet. So they remained in custody. Murphy's accomplice, Murph the Surf's accomplice, Khan, He offered to give up the location of the jewels for a lighter sentence. And the authorities were stoked. They're like, oh, jackpot. Fantastic. They ended up flying him back. They rented him a car. Apparently, Kun was like, no, I'm not going to go around in this black sedan. And he convinced the authorities to instead hire him a red convertible. But then it seems like he just drove him around town. He was going into bars, this sort of stuff. Basically giving the authorities the runaround and frustrating them quite a lot. But the police were able to recover most of the gems, but not the Eagle Diamond. It was never found. They've said in the years since that even though they were under pretty heavy surveillance, they were able to sell it off. And the thought is, or the theory is now, that it was probably cut into smaller pieces and distributed that way. So they went to court, and in April of 1965, Murphy and his accomplices pled guilty and were sentenced to 3 years each. Quick fun fact, little side fun fact, 23-year-old Nora Ephron, who was the screenwriter of a classic rom-com, Sleepless in Seattle, When Harry Met Sally, and You've Got Mail, landed her first front-page story of the New York Post by covering this theft. Little aside there, for fun. So there's been a documentary series about him made in recent years called Murph the Surf, and the director R.J. Cutler told the New York Post, quote, "People were fascinated with the theft, and later with these handsome surfers turned jewel thieves who pulled it off. They were the first true crime celebrities." I reckon I've heard that said about a lot of people, and surely the first ones weren't in the 60s. I reckon there might have been a few before that. But anyway, none of them ended up serving the full 3-year sentence. They got out after 2 years. And Murph the Surf just continued on with his criminal ways. So in 1967, he was arrested again, this time for murder. Yeah, he's taken it up a notch. He was given 2 life sentences, one for murder and one for another robbery, known as the Wofford robberies. And in prison, he allegedly found God and ended up being released on parole in 1986. He then became a prison evangelist, living until the year 2020, when he passed away in Florida. Bit of a wild tale. It seems like he couldn't help himself, and then all of a sudden in prison turned it all around. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tale from history. Maybe tonight, instead of counting sheep, you can count big shiny diamonds as you drift off to a big night's sleep. Oh, I tell you what, I'm ready to hit the hay myself. Always a pleasure to hang out. I hope you enjoyed this tale, and see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me on History from A to Zonked. This is Matt Stewart, signing off.